They thought their life was perfect, a happy couple and a loyal dog. But when the dog began to act strangely, the man never imagined it was trying to warn him about something much darker. A betrayal hidden right inside his own home. They thought their life was perfect. David and Emily had been married for 4 years, living in a cozy home on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of house that, at first glance, seemed pulled from a magazine spread: white picket fence, trimmed lawn, a garden Emily proudly tended on weekends. For a long time, everything felt right. Or at least, it looked that way. The final piece of their happy puzzle came on a warm spring afternoon when David brought home Max, a young German shepherd with curious eyes and boundless energy. Emily had been hesitant at first. "A dog is a lot of work," she'd said, frowning slightly as Max scrambled across the kitchen floor. But David, with that boyish grin she'd once fallen for, insisted. "He'll bring life into this house," he promised. "Loyalty. And maybe one day protect us." They named him Max, and from that day he became family. Max was everything David had hoped for: intelligent, affectionate, fiercely loyal. In the mornings he would wait by the door, tail thumping, ready for their sunrise walks. In the evenings he lay by David's feet as they watched television, occasionally lifting his head to nudge David's hand for a scratch behind the ears. Emily, for the most part, kept her distance. She claimed she was more of a cat person. David didn't think much of it. Relationships with pets took time. She'd warm up to Max eventually. Or so he believed. At first, the changes were subtle. Max would freeze when Emily entered the room. His ears, usually perked with excitement, flattened against his head. He stopped taking treats from her hand, something David chalked up to quirks in canine taste. "Maybe he just doesn't like the snacks you picked," David said with a light laugh, brushing it off. Emily forced a smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Then came the growls. Low, quiet, almost inaudible at first, but unmistakable. Whenever Emily approached David, Max's body stiffened, a soft rumble growing in his throat. David scolded him gently. "Max, no. She's family." The dog's eyes flicked toward David, filled with something deeper than simple disobedience. Worry. Alarm. As if he were trying to say, "No, she's not." But David couldn't understand. Not yet. Over the following weeks, Max's unease escalated. He would pace the house restlessly whenever Emily was home alone with him, his nails clicking anxiously against the wooden floors. He shredded the throw pillow Emily favored. He dragged her scarf from the coat rack and tore it apart with unusual ferocity. David found him one evening snarling at Emily's handbag, teeth bared. Emily exploded. "This is insane, David," she cried, yanking her purse away. "The dog has it out for me. He's dangerous." David, exhausted from work, sighed deeply. "I'll take him for longer walks," he offered. "He's just restless." But a quiet voice in the back of his mind, a voice he couldn't yet silence, began to whisper, "Or maybe Max is seeing something you don't." The final straw, at least for Emily, came one Friday evening. David returned home earlier than usual and found Max blocking the doorway to their bedroom. His hackles were raised, lips curled back over sharp teeth. Inside the room, Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her phone clutched tightly in her hands, screen dark. "What's going on here?" David asked, his chest tightening. Emily stood quickly, smoothing down her blouse. "Nothing," she snapped. "But this dog, he's a menace. Either he goes, or I do." Silence stretched between them. David's gaze flicked from Emily's flushed face to Max's unwavering stance. The dog stood like a sentinel, as if physically guarding David from crossing that threshold. Something was wrong. Deeply, undeniably wrong. For the first time, David felt it in his bones. That night, long after Emily had gone to bed with sharp, clipped words, David sat awake in the living room. Max lay beside him, head resting on David's knee. Gently, David stroked the fur between the dog's ears. "What is it, boy?" he murmured. "What are you trying to tell me?" Max lifted his eyes to meet David's gaze, and in that moment the man saw not just loyalty, but desperation. Urgency. A plea. The dog shifted, nudging David's hand toward the bedroom door, then back toward himself, as if to say, "Follow me. Pay attention." David's pulse quickened. The pieces didn't fit. Not yet. But they were starting to slide into place. Max wasn't just being difficult. He wasn't acting out of jealousy or confusion. He was warning him. As David turned out the lights and settled into bed that night, he couldn't sleep. His mind churned over every strange behavior, every guttural growl. Every time Max had placed himself between David and Emily like a living shield. What had he missed? What had Max seen, heard, or sensed in those quiet moments when David wasn't home? Lying in the darkness, David promised himself one thing. Tomorrow he would start paying closer attention. No more excuses. No more dismissing the signs. Max was trying to protect him, and David intended to find out why. Morning broke gray and heavy, the sky cloaked in low clouds that seemed to press down on the house like an unwelcome weight. David awoke restless, shadows of uneasy dreams still lingering behind his eyes. Beside him, Emily slept soundly, or at least she pretended to. Her breathing, David noticed, was too even, too controlled. Max sat at the foot of the bed, unmoving, gaze locked not on David but on Emily. His ears twitched with every faint rustle of the sheets. David's pulse quickened. The night before hadn't been a fluke. Max's behavior wasn't just restlessness. It was warning. David quietly slipped out of bed and padded to the kitchen, Max following close at his heels like a guardian shadow. Coffee did little to ease his tension. Max refused his breakfast, ignoring his usual excitement for the morning routine. Instead, the dog kept circling near Emily's handbag, still resting on the dining table from the night before. David frowned. "Max, leave it," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Max let out a low growl, nudged the bag with his nose, then fixed David with an intense, almost pleading stare. And then, without hesitation, he sank his teeth into the strap and yanked it to the floor. The contents spilled out: wallet, keys, phone, and a folded slip of paper. David's heart thudded in his chest as he bent to retrieve it. It was a receipt for a hotel reservation from 3 nights ago. Room for 2. His breath caught in his throat. The walls seemed to close in around him, the air thick and suffocating. Max sat beside him, as if sensing the storm raging inside David's chest. David's hands trembled as he turned over the receipt. His mind scrambled for explanations. A mistake, a coincidence, some innocent reason for the booking. But deep down, beneath the layers of denial, he felt the truth clawing its way to the surface. Before he could think further, Max was on the move again. The dog darted across the living room to Emily's phone, lying abandoned on the coffee table. With a swift motion, Max knocked it to the floor, then nudged it toward David. The screen flickered to life. Instinct, not thought, guided David's fingers as he unlocked the device. His heart pounded like a war drum in his chest. Messages, dozens of them, from an unknown number. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you. When can we meet again? He'll never know." The blood drained from David's face. Max whined softly, pressing his head against David's leg. David swallowed hard, a bitter taste rising in his mouth. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was fact. The sound of footsteps broke his spiral of thoughts. Emily, wrapped in a robe, emerged from the hallway, rubbing her eyes as if she'd just woken from a peaceful sleep. "What's all this noise?" she asked, feigning annoyance. David stood slowly, holding up her phone. His voice came out rough, strained. "Care to explain this?" Her eyes widened, a flash of fear crossing her face before she masked it with indignant anger. "That's private," she snapped, lunging for the phone. Max leapt between them, teeth bared, a growl rumbling deep in his throat. Emily froze. David stepped back, clutching the phone tighter. Her facade crumbled, if only for a moment. "That's not what it looks like," she stammered. "David, I can explain." But her words fell empty, lifeless. The lies had already rotted away. David's gaze hardened. "Then explain." Her lips parted, but no sound came. She swallowed, her eyes darting toward the door as if calculating escape. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken truths. And then Max broke it. With a sharp bark, he bolted toward the front door, pawing at the wood, then glancing back at David urgently. David understood instantly. Max wanted to show him something. Gripping the phone, David followed Max outside, leaving Emily frozen in the doorway. The chill of the morning bit into his skin as Max led him down the street, tail stiff with focus. Past neighbors' houses, past the corner store, until they reached the park at the edge of town. David's chest ached with every step, not from the cold, but from the weight of betrayal pressing down on him. At the far end of the park, beneath the shelter of a grove of trees, David saw them. A man, early 40s, tall, with sharp features and familiar eyes. The same eyes that had stared back at him from those messages. Emily's lover. His arm was slung casually over the back of a bench. His gaze fixed on his phone. Waiting for Emily. David felt his breath hitch, his fists clenching at his sides. Max growled low and deep, standing protectively by David's leg. It was true. All of it. Undeniable. Irrefutable. Shattering. David's knees nearly buckled. A wave of dizziness crashing over him. Memories flooded his mind. Their wedding day, late-night talks, shared dreams of a future together. All a lie. Max pressed close, grounding him, a steady presence against the chaos. The man on the bench never noticed them. David didn't confront him. He didn't need to. The truth was enough. It burned cold and sharp, but it was pure. David turned away, his heart heavy, his mind ablaze. Max followed at his side, never straying a step away. Back at the house, Emily stood by the door, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She opened her mouth to speak, but David raised a hand, silencing her before the words could come. "There's nothing you can say," he said hoarsely. "It's over." Tears welled in her eyes, but David felt nothing. No pity, no sorrow, only the echoing void of betrayal. Max stood between them, a living wall of protection. Emily hesitated, then, without another word, she turned and walked away. Out of the house, out of their lives. As the door clicked shut behind her, David felt a strange stillness settle over the home. Not emptiness. Not yet. More like quiet relief. Max nudged David's hand gently, drawing him back from the depths of his thoughts. David sank to his knees, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck. "Thank you, boy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for never giving up on me." Max licked his cheek once, a simple, loyal gesture. Together, they sat in the quiet house. The storm of lies finally passed. The worst was over, but the healing had only just begun. The days that followed felt like walking through fog. David moved on autopilot, rising in the mornings, feeding Max, staring blankly out the window as hours drifted by like clouds across a gray sky. The house was quieter than ever. Too quiet. Every room echoed with ghosts of the life he thought he had. Emily's laughter no longer filled the kitchen. Her perfume no longer lingered in the air. All that remained were cold spaces and empty silences. David had imagined heartbreak would feel like fire, burning fierce and fast. But it felt more like ice. Slow, creeping, numbing. Max noticed. From the moment Emily left, Max had not left David's side. Wherever David went, the dog followed. A loyal shadow, warm and constant in the chill of David's despair. On the worst days, when David could barely muster the will to rise from bed, Max would nudge his hand with his wet nose, whine softly, and lay his head on David's chest, as if to remind him, "You're not alone." One morning, after another sleepless night, David awoke to find Max sitting by the bedroom door, David's old walking boots clenched gently in his jaws. The message was clear. "Let's go outside." David almost refused. What was the point? But Max's eyes, steady, patient, filled with quiet hope, chipped away at the icy walls around David's heart. With a sigh, David pulled on the boots and followed Max into the pale morning light. Outside, winter was giving way to spring. Snowmelt dripped from the eaves of houses. Crocuses poked their heads through patches of slush. The air smelled fresher, cleaner. David took his first deep breath in days. Max led him down familiar paths, the same ones they used to walk together before everything fell apart. At first, David walked with heavy steps, shoulders hunched, his gaze fixed on the ground. But Max trotted ahead with purpose, tail wagging gently, pausing now and then to look back and urge David on. Something inside David flickered. Not a flame, not yet, but a spark. The first warmth he had felt since the truth had shattered his world. As the days turned into weeks, Max kept pulling David back to life. When David sat too long at his desk, lost in painful memories, Max would drop a ball at his feet and nudge it insistently. When David lingered by the window, staring at nothing, Max would whine softly, bringing over his leash. The message was always the same. Come back to me. Come back to life. Little by little, David responded. Their walks grew longer. David began to notice things again. The way sunlight danced on melting puddles. The sound of birds returning to the neighborhood. He found himself talking to Max more, filling the quiet with his voice. Guess it's just you and me now, boy, he said one afternoon as they stood beneath the budding branches of an old oak. Max thumped his tail against David's leg, his eyes bright with affection. It was enough. For the first time in weeks, David smiled. One rainy afternoon, David sat at the kitchen table, staring at a mug of coffee gone cold. Memories of Emily drifted through his mind like unwanted shadows. Her laughter, her lies, her betrayal. A familiar weight pressed on his chest. Max, sensing the storm brewing inside his master, placed his head on David's lap. David looked down into those faithful eyes and felt tears prick the corners of his own. Without thinking, he whispered, "How did you know, Max? How did you know before I did?" Max licked his hand in response, simple, pure, wordless love. David chuckled wetly, brushing the tears from his cheeks. "You saved me," he murmured. "You saved me from her. And now you're saving me from myself." Max's tail wagged, thudding softly against the floor. In that moment, David felt the heaviness inside him begin to lighten, if only just a little. The true turning point came on a crisp, clear morning. David woke with a start, surprised to realize he had slept through the night for the first time in weeks. Max sat by the window watching the dawn break over the horizon. The first rays of sunlight spilled across the floor, bathing the room in golden warmth. David felt something stir in his chest, not the hollow ache of loss, but something gentler. A fragile hope. Without waiting for Max to fetch the leash, David rose from bed and reached for it himself. "Come on, boy," he said, his voice stronger than it had been in days. "Let's go see the world." Max barked once, sharp and joyful, and bounded to the door. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. Children played in puddles left by spring rains. Neighbors tended their gardens, waving as David and Max passed by. For the first time, David waved back. The weight in his chest wasn't gone, but it was lighter, manageable, survivable. Thanks to Max. As they walked, David realized something profound. Emily's betrayal had broken his trust in people. But Max had restored his faith and loyalty in unconditional love. While others lied and left, Max had stayed. While others betrayed, Max had protected. While David had fallen apart, Max had quietly, patiently pieced him back together. And now, with every step they took side by side, they were moving not just away from the past, but towards something new. Something better. Weeks later, David and Max found themselves at the park where the final truth had been revealed. The grove of trees where Emily's lover had once waited now stood in full bloom, green and alive beneath the spring sun. David paused beneath the canopy, looking around. The memories still lingered, but they no longer stabbed at him like knives. They were just echoes now. Lessons learned. He knelt beside Max, scratching behind his ears. "You were right all along, boy," David said softly. "You saw what I couldn't." Max pressed his head against David's chest, a low, contented rumble in his throat. David smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. Not just the warmth of the sun, but of healing. Of moving on. Of starting again. Together. As they walked home, David felt lighter than he had in months. His step had regained its strength, his heart its quiet rhythm. Beside him, Max trotted proudly, tail wagging like a banner of victory. They had faced betrayal. They had weathered heartbreak. And they had emerged stronger. Together. Always together. Because some bonds, the truest ones, can never be broken.